evening. I'm Brittany Ramsey. Thanks very much for being with us. While it's far too early to say that Thunder Bay has turned a corner in the battle against COVID-19, the numbers over the last 2 days are a positive sign. For the second day in a row, the District Health Unit has reported just 5 new cases. 4 of today's cases come from the Thunder Bay area. 2 are from the district jail, while the other 2 come from close contact. There's also 1 associated with the Vallard East-West High project near Marathon. Today's case count brings the total number of cases to 868. 155 of them are considered active. That's 3 fewer than Sunday. 2 COVID patients remain in hospital. 1 of them is in the ICU. Meanwhile, the health unit has declared the outbreak to be over at Hogarth Riverview Manor. The outbreak was first announced on January 11th when 1 staff member tested positive, impacting 2 units on the 4th floor of the seniors' home on Lily Street. Meanwhile, provincial COVID-19 numbers are also down today, with 1,958 new cases being reported. But despite the decline, health officials caution that it's still too soon to relax our vigilance against the virus. Meanwhile, vaccine supply issues have forced the Ford government to change its vaccination plan. It says it will now prioritize long-term care and retirement home residents. Colin DeMello has more.
1 year after COVID-19 was first discovered in Ontario and the new variant of the virus is beginning to spread.
34 cases of the UK variant have been confirmed in Ontario.
And that, public health officials say, presents a whole new challenge as they now try to work backwards to determine the extent of the spread.
It's probably been moving around in Ontario before that. We're now becoming aware of it. We may find out more as we do our assertive testing, and it may be more prevalent than we think.
Compounding those concerns is the fact that Ontario is now facing a vaccine shortage. Pfizer is upgrading its manufacturing facility in Belgium, resulting in a severe cut to Canada's supply. Ontario will receive 0 doses of the Pfizer vaccine this week and just 26,000 doses next week.
It's a sort of temporary delay, if you like, but it does cause a lot of extra work.
The delay has forced the province to change its vaccination strategy. Residents in all long-term care homes, high-risk retirement homes, and First Nation elder care centers will now be prioritized for the vaccine. And the province is guaranteeing they will receive a booster shot.
That means reserving second doses and vaccines for frail and vulnerable long-term care home residents.
What it also means is a pause in vaccinations for staff and essential caregivers in long-term care until residents have been inoculated. Their union is now questioning this province's overall strategy.
Back in December, we had enough vaccinations to make sure that all residents and long-term care frontline caregivers received that vaccine. You know, for whatever reason, the government decided to do it in a, expeditious manner rather than a proficient manner, in my opinion.
The province says employees were at the front of the line when vaccines first arrived.
And the medical officer's advice was this, that you could give them a huge level of protection by simply vaccinating the staff who could come to where the Pfizer was, because initially we could not move the Pfizer. But
with the variant now spreading in Ontario, the province is racing against the clock to vaccinate those most at risk.
The Anishinaabe Nation is welcoming the first visit by a vaccination team to one of its remote First Nations tomorrow. Officials with Orange will travel to the Weenusk First Nation, a community of around 500 people near Hudson Bay. Chief Abraham Hunter will get the first dose to show that it's safe, and he's encouraging his residents to give their consent to receive it as well. Orange is leading the operation to bring the Moderna vaccine to 31 remote communities with help from EMS staff and the Canadian Rangers. Once the team is done in Weenusk, they plan to travel next week to Neskantaga, Slate Falls, Muskrat Dam, Fort Severn, and Kashashawan. The team members have all been vaccinated and will return to each community in a few weeks to administer the second dose. Officials with Thunder Bay Transit say it would cost the city millions of dollars a year to move to a fare-free model. Local anti-poverty advocates want to see free transit in place within 2 years. Council isn't expected to make any decisions on the matter, but it will be discussed at tonight's meeting. Ryan Benazzo has more.
Transit manager Brad Loroff says moving to a fare-free transit model would cost the city about $7 million a year and add roughly $140 to the average residential tax bill. Loroff's memo to council comes in response to recent calls from poverty-free Thunder Bay to implement a fare-free model by 2023. 35% of transit's operating costs are typically covered by user fees. There's also a concern that a fare-free model would attract more disruptive riders, as was the case when transit fares were temporarily eliminated last year due to COVID-19. Loroff suggests the city may want to consider other alternatives to reduce the cost for those in need, such as free rides for seniors or low-income earners, free rides during off-peak hours, or cheaper monthly ride passes. Also on Monday, Council will receive the final Superior North EMS Master Plan, which calls for the consolidation of a number of bases across the region. Some regional mayors have already expressed their disapproval of the plan. Finally, Mayor Bill Morrow has stated publicly that he plans to introduce a motion calling for hockey nets to be returned to the city's outdoor rinks. The nets were recently removed on the advice of the district health unit in an effort to limit gatherings. Ryan Benazzo, TBT News.
The Thunder Bay CEDC and T-Baytel are celebrating a recent Ontario government announcement of $2.5 million to help bring fiber connections to rural areas around the city. The two-year project is also expected to boost economic development. Significant funding is also going to some smaller towns throughout the region. Kayla Karim has details.
The rural Thunder Bay Fiber to the Home project will aim to reach an additional 2,300 customers in parts of the rural north and south sides by the end of 2022, providing them with faster and more reliable fiber services. The CEDC lobbied for the $2.9 million, which will allow T-Baytel to expand their broadband infrastructure.
The project is very timely. As we know right now, the world is going through the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, and never has there been such a demand on broadband resources. Businesses have scaled up to include more access to the digital global marketplace, which means they need more broadband capacity to do business. And we're looking at having over 2,300 new customers here accessing broadband through this expansion project.
We have been working over the last 5 years to provide fiber to all the residents of the city of Thunder Bay. We're about 90% complete. This announcement helps us get certainly closer to our 100% goal over the remaining years. And it will bring a state-of-the-art difference in terms of the ability to work from home, to educate from home, and to enjoy the social aspects as well through high-speed broadband.
T-Baytel CEO Dan Topatai says thanks to this funding, the cost of installing the new fiber optic services will not fall on the customer. Elsewhere, Oliver Papoonj received $2.3 million to bring fiber to more than 1,700 addresses by 2023. And Marathon and Terrace Bay received around $4.2 million to help bring fiber to those communities.
Well, we have already made investments in communities such as Fort Francis, Dryden, Kenora, Keewatin. We are certainly looking to expand regional communities as well, and Marathon and Terrace Bay are certainly two that are on our radar as we speak. And for the other areas, I think over time, as we manage the projects that we've received funding for now, we'll continue to look for areas of opportunity that might make sense for us.
The projects will support skilled positions that already exist at T-Baytel and will also add a handful of new jobs at the company. Kayla Karim, TBT News.
Thanks to hundreds of hours of archived news footage spanning more than 2 decades, a documentary film on Thunder Bay's first mayor has just been produced. Saul Laskin's life and story can now be viewed online as part of the Real Memories of the Lakehead project. Troy Charles has more.
The Thunder Bay Museum, in partnership with Sheba Films Limited and Friends of the Finnish Labour Temple, are continuing to work at digitizing more than 20 years of archival news footage donated by Dougal Media as part of its Real Memories project. The new documentary, Saul Laskin, Man and Politician, is based on a lecture given by Peter Raffo at the Thunder Bay Museum last September.
I am an admirer of Saul Laskin. I see him as an outstanding leader with a sense of civic duty and a clear vision of the future of his city.
Thunder Bay Museum Executive Director Scott Bradley explains more of the process.
To scan in all of that good archival footage from Dougal Media, and it's stuff that hasn't seen the light of day since, the 1950s, the 1960s when it was originally shot. And it's now offered us this great window into different history of Thunder Bay, but especially for this documentary about Saul Laskin, to see him in motion, to hear his words that haven't been heard aloud since 1970. It's just amazing.
Yes, I'm very pleased to see that the people recognize the ability of many of the elderly members and some of our councilmen who've been in for a number of years.
The footage spans from 1958 to 1978 and includes newscasts, interviews, and stories of Laskin's life. Largely due to his vision, in 1970, Fort William and Port Arthur were amalgamated into Thunder Bay, and Laskin was elected as the new city's first mayor.
He had this vision for what, the Lakehead, what Port Arthur and Fort William could be, and he drove so hard for it and had to do so many different things to do it. It's fascinating to watch that story and to imagine what kind of, wherewithal it'll take from a person to achieve a goal like that would seem impossible otherwise.
We are gathered here at a very important and momentous time in the history of our area. At the stroke of midnight, a new city will be born.
The Real Memories Project has received additional funding from the Thunder Bay Community Foundation, which will be used to create a series of 20 short documentaries based on the archival footage. To donate to the project or to view the Laskin documentary, visit the Thunder Bay Museum website. Troy Charles, TBT News.
3 people, including a Toronto youth, are facing charges after a drug bust at a Northside Thunder Bay home. A search warrant was executed around 3 o'clock Friday afternoon in the 300 block of Ambrose Street as part of an ongoing investigation into drug trafficking activity. Officers with the Thunder Bay Police Emergency Task and Intelligence Units and the OPP's Organized Crime Enforcement Bureau arrested 3 suspects and seized a quantity of fentanyl, cocaine, cash, and drug paraphernalia. A 42-year-old woman from Thunder Bay and a 17-year-old male from Toronto are facing drug trafficking charges and both remain in custody. A 39-year-old city man was charged with obstructing police and was released on bail Saturday pending a future court date. There's some very promising news for Barrick's Hemlo mine, which could see its lifespan extended. The mine east of Marathon recently underwent a shift in direction, which will have the open pit portion close and operations move underground. When Barrick merged with Randgold in 2018, management wanted to assess the site for its potential, as little was known about what lay beneath the surface. Catherine Raw is Barrick's chief operating officer for North America. She says what geologists have discovered will allow for operations to continue into the next decade, long past the mine's original expected lifespan of 2022.
So what's clear is now, as we understand the existing ore body better, we're beginning to see extensions to the west, underground, good grades. So what we're seeing is the future of Hemlo is now an underground mining operation that is able to grow to the west. There's potential now also in the remnant workings to the east.
Ross says the open pit section will provide a portal to the underground operations. New equipment and infrastructure will be brought in to facilitate the transition. The Hemlo site has been in operation for over 30 years and has produced more than 21 million ounces of gold. The mine employs hundreds of workers, many of whom live in the surrounding communities of Marathon, Manitowage, and White River. Controversial Senator Lynn Beyak is stepping down. The move comes 3 years before her mandatory retirement. The Dryden senator says she's honoring the 8-year term limit that would have been imposed on senators under the Harper government's original plan to have an elected Senate. Beyak was suspended from the Senate after she claimed residential schools benefited Indigenous children, although many suffered abuse and thousands died of disease and malnutrition. Beyak says she continues to stand by her statement, saying she believes the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was, quote, not as balanced as it should be. The expansion of Lakehead University's athletic facilities is nearing completion. The Wolf Den is just weeks away from opening its doors. However, no one will actually be allowed to go inside for some time. While they would prefer to have a real opening to celebrate, LU officials still think it will raise the school's profile for potential new students. Corey Nordstrom has more.
The new Lakehead University Wolf Den is coming together just as it was envisioned. Nearly complete is the $12 million project, which came almost entirely from extra tuition fees after the students voted overwhelmingly in favor of supporting the added recreational space back in 2018.
I think it was an area where we fell a little bit short on the athletic side from a recreational standpoint, so we're going to make sure that we meet that need. And then from a community standpoint, it's an amazing building that will add to our university, and by adding to our university, we add to our community.
The 30,000 square foot renovation will have added office space for non-varsity coaches, a weight room underneath their new cardio space, both overlooking the new multi-use gym. Warden says now with the complimentary piece to the Institute's hangar and CJ Sanders Fieldhouse, they rival the finest fitness clubs in town, making the university more desirable to future students.
It's a really big part of how we recruit and retain students. It's a big part to our brand, and I think when people are making decisions about where they want to go to school, the athletic facilities is top of mind. What kind of recreational services are we going to get? So I think we meet that and check that box now.
The Wolf Den was originally scheduled to be complete by the end of last year, but the pandemic delayed its construction in May. While the work is allowed to continue during the provincial stay-at-home orders, Warden calls it a slight disappointment that students and the community won't get to use it right away, especially based on how popular their facilities were throughout the pandemic.
It may have been amended a little bit based on the situation, but they were happy that we were open. And I think it was important to the student health, the student mental health. So when we can, we want to make sure that we're back up and running and providing those services.
The majority of the work on the Lakehead University Wolf Den is just a few short weeks away from completion, but that doesn't include the space behind me. A wellness clinic will be a part of the final stage of construction, housing professionals in the fields of nutrition and sports science. Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
Thunder Bay's own Heartbeat Hot Sauce got its moment on the world stage this past weekend, thanks to the company's collaboration with UFC fighter Dustin Poirier. Their new hot sauce was featured in the pre-fight event between Poirier and superstar Conor McGregor.
So you've got the hot sauce, Dustin. I'm actually I'd love to taste the hot sauce.
I got a bottle for you.
I appreciate that. I've got a bottle of proper for you. I'd love to share that.
After McGregor asked for the Louisiana-style hot sauce, Poirier was a man of his word and handed over a bottle for all the world to see. Al Borbahakis is the owner of Heartbeat Hot Sauce, and he's clearly on cloud nine with the recent exposure.
That moment in the sport and with that rivalry historically, that happening was headline news for those reasons. And then we just so happen to be, slipped right into the mix as while that's happening, he's holding the bottle up. So, I don't know that there's a dollar value you could apply to that scenario to have advertising like that. So we were shocked, super excited, obviously.
Borbahakis says that moment with McGregor has sparked global interest and sales have gone up dramatically, and perhaps even more so after Poirier won Saturday's fight against the biggest name in the sport. Plans for the sauce started about a year ago when the Louisiana native reached out to Heartbeat looking to collaborate. Poirier's Louisiana-style hot sauce was officially released in December and can be purchased online at Heartbeat Hot Sauce's website.
Yeah, McGregor got the taste of the hot sauce for sure.